Friday is tender deadline day. I call it Brandon Woodruff Day because we temporarily said goodbye to Brandon Woodruff last year. But who are we going to say goodbye to this year? We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I got a list of names here we're going to go down, and our guest today is Tyler Koerth from Reviewing the Brew. He's going to join us here in a second and get his take on a few things and what's going on with the Milwaukee Brewers in addition to Friday's big day. Yeah, we'll get to a few things other than that as well coming up here in a little bit. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. So you got to win the $5 bet, and then you get $150 in your account. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Let's get started with Tyler Koerth joining us from Reviewing the Brew. Terrific. A lot of terrific writers on that site, including Tyler. If Tyler wasn't terrific, we wouldn't have him on. They're all good. Tyler, appreciate you coming on. Happy holidays to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you as well. It's always a pleasure to talk Brewers with you, and it's been a while, so we got some stuff to catch up on.
Yeah, we do. We certainly do. During the season, I don't get a lot of guests because there's games every day, and I'm recapping them on all that. And I get all you guys coming up here in the off season. We review the brew. That's what you do 24/7. But let's start with that tender deadline. Savale, Payamps, Haas, Mears, Milner, Williams, Contreras, and McGill. Now, there's some obvious that they're going to tender to. Who's going to be the surprise this year?
Yeah, I think, as you alluded to in your intro there, who we say goodbye to, I think it's going to be someone who was formerly a very reliable reliever out of the bullpen, heavy usage guy, and then did not have success last year. And we had some emergence of some other left-handed pitchers that kind of took over his role. So that's obviously alluding to Hobie Milner, who's projected to earn $2.7 million in 2025 in arbitration. I don't foresee the Brewers keeping him around for that price tag, and plus having a whole stockpile of lefties to go to next year, whether DL Hall comes into the bullpen where he starts or does a mix of both. There's a lot of options to choose from, and I don't think Hobie's going to make the cut.
The emergence of the lefties was, I thought, one of the positive. There's a lot of positives this last year, but I thought those lefties out of the bullpen, they were dynamite.
Yeah, Brian Hudson was a pleasant surprise for really what was his first, full year in the big leagues, coming over from the Dodgers. And then obviously they had Jared Koenig, who he did some starter role. They pitched the crap out of him early on in the year, and then they're like, wow, he's lashed away onto this team, and his velocity got better as the year went on. Koenig's did. So yeah, those two are a lot cheaper options. They obviously are coming off a season where they both had success, despite Hudson kind of ending the year in AAA with kind of some arm fatigue concerns there and mechanic work. But yeah, this kind of leaves Hobie Milner as I think in my mind, a no-brainer as someone we say goodbye to.
Yeah, that Hudson thing, I don't know what to quite think about that, because that guy was dynamite, man. And then we sent him down to AAA and don't hear from him for a while. And all the while he's saying, I'm good. I'm good. I don't know. That was just an odd situation right there.
Very odd. Yeah, I think there were some reports that emerged that they actually had him in Arizona during that time frame, kind of working on the mechanics, getting in the pitching lab. There's obviously a period where he just didn't throw for a long time. So I think fatigue, as I alluded to earlier, was kind of a big part of that. But yeah, it was so weird because even before they sent him down, we were kind of seeing some of this. We're like, guys, walking a few more batters. The velocity is not where it was. But he was still getting guys out. He was still seeing results.
Yeah, you're still getting outs. And I was like, man, they're sending him down to AAA. What? So, well, he's going to be on the roster. There's no doubt. So you got Milner. I guess he's like Not a big surprise. I mean, he's a name, but he's not a big surprise. I think there's a lot of us think that, Milner might be on the, might be non-tendered. Milner, they're going to keep Mears. They love Mears. Haas?
I think Eric Haas showed enough last year that he's going to get tendered a contract, especially with Gary Sanchez leaving in free agency. You have Jefferson Cuero on the 40-man roster who got injured last year on opening day of the minor league season who didn't play. So Jefferson Cuero's, I don't think he's going to be on the opening day roster. So you need someone to back up William Contreras. Haas is technically be his second year with the team. He showed he can handle the bat at times. So I think he really played his way into a contract for next year, is my kind of thinking with Haas.
You brought up something interesting, and I just thought of this now. With Cuero, one of the top prospects, if not named the number one prospect, but he's blocked by Contreras, who's going to be here for 3 years, hopefully longer. Where is he going to fit in if he's got all this? He's coming off the injury, I know, but where does he fit into this puzzle down the road?
Yeah, someday I think it would be more so using Cuero for his defensive abilities. He's a highly regarded defensive catcher. His arm strength is through the roof. He guns down runners at an insane clip, one of the best at it in the minor leagues when he was healthy. Obviously, we don't have last year's data because he didn't play. But, we saw the Brewers last year. William Contreras wants to catch every day, but there's little things that are going to hamper him, whether it's, a swollen thumb that kind of slowed him down for a little bit of period of time. So if you can kind of spell Contreras in the years to come at DH for, a few days at a time, or just to, get out from behind home plate, I think that's where Cuero projects right now. He's going to be a backup catcher. And when your kind of ceiling is like, hey, I'm a highly regarded defensive catcher, you're going to find a role on a big league team. And if his bat comes around, even better.
When the Brewers first got Haas from Detroit, I thought, man, there's my backup catcher right there. Then they went out and got Sanchez. Haas didn't throw it. I think he threw it one runner all season. And that's the problem I have with him. I love his bat. I love his stick. The thing is, he can't throw anybody out on the base. I think of the backup catcher, well, you always got to throw guys out, but especially as a backup catcher coming in there, we don't want guys running all day on this guy.
Yeah, I see your point for sure. I'm not too worried about, how many runners a backup catcher's throwing out, if he's playing on a Wednesday day game or Sunday afternoon game. It's going to be far and few in between, I think. And it's gotten easier to steal bases, bigger bases. Runners are getting better jumps with the pitch clock. But kind of, I think the one thing just kind of branching off this that kind of might impact Haas the most in regards to, how much can he make a jump defensively is the Brewers just lost one of their coaches, Walker McGivern, to the White Sox, who, his technical role was, defensive run prevention coordinator, but he also played a big role in catcher development. So we've seen the Brewers over the years, there was like Omar Narvaez all of a sudden goes from a negative defensive catcher to, hey, he's not so bad. And they do things just like that. So, it's going to be interesting to see who takes over that role. And, if Haas is tendered the contract and enters the year as the backup catcher, what kind of strides they can make in that department.
Two more names I'm going to throw at you for Friday. Payamps. You see Payamps, who at one point I looked at him as closer ability. What do you see there?
I think Payamps tendered a contract for sure. He is out of options. It was kind of last year. He was the pitcher that kind of took a little bit of heat because it was like, hey, you're kind of letting these inherited runners score. You're letting runners on base, but still the ERA wasn't too bad. Yeah. So his slider, when it's on, it's one of the best in the game. Like you said, he's got some closer type stuff. You pair in that mid-90s fastball with it, and he's proven that he can pitch in high leverage situations. And Devin Williams, who will obviously be tendered a contract on Friday, but may not be with the Brewers on opening day if a trade happens later on. There could potentially be a role where Payamps is closing games out for the Brewers next year. Obviously, you would think Trevor McGill would kind of easily slide into that role, but it's good to have guys who have that experience and ability to do so.
Lots of chatter about Savali. Maybe he's trade bait. I think he's here. I think they'll tender him a contract.
I'm kind of leaning towards the opposite with Savali.
Really? Okay. $8 million for a starting pitcher like that?
Yeah, so earlier on, like when, the offseason first started, I was like, Aaron Savali, $8 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little steep for the Brewers, but, they could trade him. I had that same kind of philosophy. And then all of a sudden, the Brewers placed Colin Ray on waivers for $5.5 million, reliable Ray, and nobody claimed him. Nobody wanted that $5.5 million contract for Colin Ray. So I think if the Brewers tender Aaron Savali a contract on Friday with the intention of, hey, we probably want to shed this payroll during the offseason and we want to trade him, I think that they're going to have a heck of a hard time finding a trade partner, just based off what we've seen already, with Colin Ray being the example I alluded to.
I like that. Reliable Ray. Why did you wait till after they cut him to give me that one? That's awesome. Reliable Ray. He was for 2 years.
Sure was. He sure was.
So you think Savali's coming back? Or you don't think he is? You think he might be on the block tomorrow?
I think he will be non-tendered. I don't think he'll be coming back next year. He's going to enter the free agency pool, and someone will sign him for less than $8 million is my projection.
And 3 Captain Obviouses, McGill, Contreras, and Williams. And when we come up next, I'm going to ask you, which one of these would you give a long-term contract to right now? Contreras, Terang, Frelick. If you had to do one right now, there's probably an obvious there too. We'll get to that coming up. Tyler Koerth, our guest from Reviewing the Brew. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Always great to get guys like Tyler aboard here in the offseason. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. They give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. Maybe see some action you like this weekend. Live plays in the NFL. A team you really like. Well, you didn't bet on them, but you liked them. And they were a heavy favorite. Well, they got down early. Well, your odds are better now if you take them on the live line. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out all the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets, FanDuel.com. And you're going to get started when you win your first $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets into your account. That's for all new customers. You got to be a new customer. And if you hit that $5 bet, $150 into your account. Get started. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And the reason why? Because they offer great deals like this right here. So get started. There's college games going on this weekend, the NBA, college basketball. And of course, next week, that's you got a bonanza of everything. Thanksgiving week, they do everything to help you keep away from those relatives with all the sports going on. But visit FanDuel.com. Lots to go on there. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner, sports book partner of the NFL. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Our guest, Tyler Koerth from Reviewing the Brew. By the way, our podcast, Locked On Brewers, you get it on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. And, of course, our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. So my buddy, Nick Van Knocker, who I broadcast the state football championships with earlier today, with Lamira winning a state title, he gave me a great suggestion. 3 players. Who would you lock up first? Contreras, Terang, Frelick. Contreras isn't obvious. It doesn't seem like right now he would be, but it doesn't seem like Contreras wants to even think about a long-term extension.
Yeah, the thing with Contreras is, in my opinion, if the Brewers wanted to lock him up, they should have did it before the 2024 season, before he, was an MVP finalist in the voting again, because his price tag is starting to get quite high. It's hard to find, young catchers. He's 26, going to be 27 next year, who can produce the offense that he does, who play as many games as he does. Granted, some of them are at designated hitter now. I know there were some talks about some maybe defensive regression and, kind of the pitch framing, not stealing as much strikes last year, but
that's too much.
Yeah, it varies on a year-to-year basis. I don't look too much into it.
Yeah, either way.
But yeah, I think Obviously, I would love to lock up William Contreras, but like I said, it's hard to find. He might have already outpriced himself out of Milwaukee. And then I guess the only caveat I could think of is like, hey, what's one other reason, outside of money, ignoring money? Why wouldn't you want to lock up William Contreras, for the next, say it's a 4 or 5 year contract extension? Honestly, the only thing I can think of is age. But towards the end of that contract, he'll be over 30 years old. Catchers over 30 see some sort of decline eventually. It's just the sport is hard on them. So right now, I mean, they have him through team control in arguably what's going to be his prime years, and that's a good thing for the Brewers. There isn't really necessarily a need for them to sign him to a long-term deal because they're going to have him till age 29. So
and good point about the age. What happens if he gets the 28, 29, Tyler, and he's showing a little regression right there?
Well, then you end up like his brother and you get moved to first base, apparently.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You're right about that. Happened to him in St. Louis. We were talking about that the other day here on the podcast. Bryce Terang. We've seen 2 years of him. Bryce Terang. What'd you think about maybe Terang giving him one of those Jackson Chourio deals? Just buy him out of arbitration, keep him here for another 8-9 years, or are you not that much into him just yet?
I wouldn't go Jackson Chourio type of level, but he was, when you posed this question to me, he was the one that actually came to mind for me just for a couple different reasons. Obviously, he's got the platinum glove this year, excellent defender. We saw that he can be a very good leadoff hitter, granted a little bit streaky at times. So kind of how will he do next year is a big question. Can he sustain that level of success that we saw him take, or can he even jump further? Because there is room for improvement there as well. But if you're talking long-term contracts, you buy out maybe 2 years after arbitration. So not Jackson Chourio deal, not 9 years, not close to a decade, but 5 years or so. I think that is something that the Brewers could potentially think about doing. Because you buy out the arbitration years, you probably save some money there, and you buy if you start going into free agency years, maybe you tack on like some options in there where you're not necessarily committing to have them in case something go wrong or the offense falls, off a cliff. But there is the potential, I think, that could be a money saving move for the Brewers, and it could benefit them.
He's the best second baseman in Brewers history defensively. He's maybe offensively better than Jim Gantner as well. Jim Gantner before this was always the number one second baseman defensively, but Terang, I mean, Gold Gloves. What second baseman ever wins a Gold Glove in Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of value he brings defensively is unreal, and he's probably one of those players with how athletic he is. Obviously, naturally a shortstop, which is a whole different conversation as to what position you play next year. But he's one of the players that really benefited from the shift restrictions because he's allowed to show off his athleticism. Where in, years past, you could stick like Mike Moustakas at second base and you wouldn't have to move for grounders. Not the case anymore.
No. Sal Frelick, another guy, I think we'll see his athleticism from time to time, Gold Glove, just terrific defense, hustle, hit the home run in the playoff game, doesn't hit enough of those home runs. I still don't know what to think about Sal Frelick just yet as far as my long term with him.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he jumps off the radar as contract extension candidate. Yeah. Excuse me. But yeah, the hustle is there. The versatility is there. We didn't get much action at third base this year, but that could change next year. Especially, with another year of kind of practicing, preparing for it underneath his belt. And really, you just know what you're going to get out of him, which is kind of the great thing, at least from a defensive standpoint. It's really the offense that's the question.
All right, when we come back, talked about Contreras, Terang, Frelick. Pat Murphy seems to think that Willie is a done deal, not coming back. Kind of the obvious there as well. We'll get to more of that coming up next here, and including William Contreras finishing in the MVP voting. All that more coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game time. You want to go to a game? Let's see. You want to go to a Bucks game soon here? I know a buddy of mine went to the game last night against the Bulls, and well, what he did was he went to Game Time, and he bought his tickets right there about a half hour before Game Time. He went to Game Time, and he struck gold. You could do that as well, all in pricing with Game Time. Toggling this feature shows you upfront, no surprise fees at the checkout. You get a great panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it. And of course, the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if, somewhere out there you find a better ticket on the internet, but you're not going to. Through Game Time, they got the great ticket coverage as well, the flexible customer service policy, but you got to download the app. And when you download the Game Time app, you create an account, use the promo code Locked On MLB, and you'll get a $20 bonus. You get $20 off your first purchase. So if you buy tickets worth $80, you're going to only pay $60 when you use Locked On MLB. So the terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On MLB, $20 off. But you got to download the Game Time app. What time is it? Game Time, lowest price guaranteed, and you're going to love the seat views. When you get a chance, after this podcast, maybe, not during, check out Game Time. Check out their app. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Final segment with Tyler Koerth. Appreciate him here on a Thursday. Chat with us for a moment or two about Brewers baseball. He's from Reviewing the Brew. Pat Murphy the other night said on Foul Territory, Tyler, that he's kind of moved on from Willie Adames. He says, the only way Willie would come back is if he doesn't get really the offer that he wants out there. And that sort of thing. So he just kind of stated what everybody thought in that. And he also said, we're probably going to keep Turang at second base. He said that a few times, but he said it on this podcast the other day.
Yeah, those are some interesting comments from Murphy. Not necessarily about Willie Adames, but, I liked what Murphy said about Adames. It's really is true, and that's how this baseball business works. Like, if you don't get the deal that you want, it wouldn't be unreasonable for him to come back on a 1-year deal. Granted, it's gonna be well above what the qualifying offer was. It's probably have to be like 25, 27, maybe even 30 million for 1 year to kind of prove it and then re-enter free agency, even though he already proved it last year. But Pat Murphy also talked about, he's like, I love that guy. He's a gamer. He's got great leadership. He alluded to all the things, not statistic wise. And that's what I think a lot of Brewer fans are going to miss about Willie Adames, because there's no reason he does not get a deal that he's looking for. He was that good last year.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be just, I don't know. He's going to get 7 years probably of what he wants. Where do you think he's going to end up?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of big markets out there that could throw a lot of money his way. Yeah, I don't know. I hear a lot about the Braves. I hear a lot about the Astros.
Phillies. I think the Phillies is where it's going to be, Tyler. But go ahead.
Oh, Phillies. Yeah, yep. This whole Alec Boehm situation being on the trade block could potentially open up, a spot at third base. He's
going to come here.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are convinced that. I do not see it happening, but
well, where do you see Willie going?
Yeah, I think I just kind of got this gut feeling that he's going to end up with the Braves. Former Brewer Orlando Arcia has kind of been manning that shortstop position there. He was an all-star, surprisingly, an all-star starter in 2023, and then didn't replicate that success last year. And the Braves are going to be looking for some firepower right out of the gates, because Acuna is not going to be ready by opening day, it sounds like. So they have not been afraid to go out and acquire superstars, whether it's trade, free agency. So I think that's where he ends up, is in Atlanta.
Atlanta. I can see that. I just think he might play some third base. It seems like he's open to it. I just never really thought about that, but some of these teams are out there saying, well, we already have a shortstop, but if you want to play third, that's okay. And it seems like he's somewhat open to it, right?
Yeah, I found all those reports pretty interesting. I mean, if you just kind of look at it from a bird's eye view, he definitely has the arm strength to play third base. He would have heck of a lot of range as a third baseman. We've seen what he can do at shortstop, how much ground he can cover. But it's not like, switching all this is pretty easy. Shortstop, third base, it's different angles you got to throw at, especially if you're feeling on the run. So it'll be interesting. I think he's been pretty clear that he's only going to switch to third base if he signs with a contending team, which I think there are plenty of contending teams that are interested in having him do that. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I like him as a shortstop. I always have. So we'll see.
Tyler, on a snowy and wet day in Wisconsin, man, thanks for taking some time out of your day, and enjoy your weekend coming up here, and have yourself a great Thanksgiving, my friend.
Thank you. You as well.
Tyler Koerth joining us from Reviewing the Brew. This is Chuck Freeman. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Remember, you get our podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. We're on so many platforms out there. We're the number one Brewers podcast because of you great Brewer fans out there. And, of course, please go to our growing YouTube page, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. Thanks for making us your first listen every day on Locked On Brewers. For your second listen, Locked On MLB, my guy Sully will take care of all the hot stove league around Major League Baseball. So tomorrow, Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers.